So I'd like to greet you all. Good morning, good early morning to our friends in North and South America. Good afternoon to our friends in the UK and Europe. Good late afternoon to our friends in Dubai and India. Good evening to our friends in Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. And good late evening to our friend in Melbourne, Australia. I believe we have some questions, JC.
Yes, Ajahn, we do. Question number 1. Can Ajahn talk about the placement of piti in the 7 factors of awakening? I usually think of piti as arising from concentration, but piti is mentioned as the 4th factor in the list. Thank you.
Yes. So let's have a look at this list. 7 factors of enlightenment. Mindfulness is the first. Investigation into Dhamma is the second. Energy is the third. Piti, rapture, is the 4th. Bojjhango sati sankato dhammanang vijayo tata viryang piti pasati, tranquility, is the 5th. Samadhi is the 6th. Upekkha is the 4th. So the first factor of enlightenment, mindfulness, when we apply this to a meditation object, a wholesome meditation object, and we are with that meditation object consistently, one of the signs of the fact that concentration is developing is energy, and then rapture. So rapture is experienced as different sensations for different people. Not everybody experiences spiritual rapture in the same way. For some people it could be hair standing on end, tears rolling down the face from the eyes. Other people get a feeling of being like floating. Other people can get a feeling of feeling dense and contracted, but it's always a pleasant feeling. So because we are being with the meditation object in a consistent way, as the mind begins to collect and gather, rapture occurs. And my teacher Ajahn Anan has explained rapture as being a bit like the waves on the top of the ocean. And then the next of the 7 factors of enlightenment, passaddhi, is tranquility. We have to go deeper past the rapture and dive down deep into serenity, tranquility. And there will tend to be more of a sense of kind of vastness, deep coolness. So when you look at the list of the jhana factors, vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekaggata. Vitaka is placing the mind on the object. Vichara is staying consistently with that object. Again, the rapture arises first. Again, tranquility comes, and then the one-pointedness. So in the experience of samadhi, it's not that there isn't rapture, it's just that the rapture changes. It goes from a kind of trilling, it goes to a deeper and deeper state of serenity, essentially. So it goes from that kind of somewhat coarse feelings of pleasure to a deeper feeling of deep tranquility and serenity, and then finally to equanimity, which is the pure equanimity, is the 4th jhana. And but we need to understand that experience of equanimity is even more pleasant. Sometimes people don't understand equanimity. They think it's indifference or it's detachment. It's actually equilibrium and perfect composure, immovability, and it's one of the 4 Brahma Viharas. So it's a divine abiding. It's a very pleasant. So it's a good sign if, when we're meditating, rapture arises. One obstruction for many meditators is they can get a bit fascinated by it. And so certain things can start to happen. Some people might start to see a bit of light in their mind's eye. And when they try to kind of go out to the light, the samadhi degenerates. We can also have the problem of liking the feeling of rapture, and then when we come to meditate, you want it again. And that desire mind will tend also to be an obstruction. So when you just come to sit, the rapture arose because one was consistently with the mind, the meditation object. And then you continue to stay with the meditation object. So in a way, you, just as you're mindful of thoughts as thoughts when you're trying to be with the breath, you keep giving the interest to the breath. Then when rapturous feelings come up, you also know them, but you keep giving the interest to the breath, because it's the meditation object of the breath what is giving rise to those feelings. And if, as the breath gets finer, you have to attenuate your awareness to become more subtle and more refined. And you know the more refined feelings of the breath with the more refined awareness. And then what happens is you should start to experience deeper state of tranquility. Like Ajahn Anand says, like diving deep into the ocean of a cool and peaceful mind. And then simply by staying with the meditation object consistently, it will become one-pointedness, ekagata eventually. So yes, rapture is one of the signposts that concentration is beginning to occur. The mind is beginning to pull away from the world of coarse perceptions and pulling inward. And it's a wonderful thing to recognize that just in having this human mind, just in having this consciousness, if you practice right mindfulness and experience right collectedness, that your mind has this capacity to experience great rapture, great serenity, deep peace, a lot of contentment. Simply a part of the hardware that we have. And if we cultivate our meditation consistently, we will see that the pleasure that comes from meditation is superior to the pleasure that comes from sensuality. And we can embrace it with more determination and appreciation, seeing that what we have, like Luang Por Chah said, all human beings, they have a mansion that is part of their inheritance. But most human beings spend their life living in a couple of crowded rooms, kind of banging into things and falling over, a couple of dusty rooms. But if we begin to train our mind, we learn about all these other beautiful rooms in the house, and we can get some of the dust out and clean things up and stop banging into things and stop falling over. So you can bring some light into the situation. And so I think what Luang Por Chah is alluding to is the 4 Brahma Viharas, for example, and the various anusatis. When we sincerely cultivate metta, sincerely cultivate compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity, or when we really bring to mind the qualities of the Buddha, bring to mind the profundity and the preciousness of the Dhamma, or our favorite teachings, and then the Sangha, the great practitioners who are an inspiration. If we train ourselves to contemplate any of these things or meditate on these things, there are many, many ways that we can brighten and gladden and uplift the mind and experience great mental joy. So this is the result of consistency. I keep saying this, I said this in the last few times as well, that mindfulness is a subtle quality that can grow to be incredibly powerful. As Lord Buddha says, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, when cultivated, made much of, lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. But they only lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless when they're powerful, when they're strong. So the way to make our mindfulness powerful and strong is through consistency. If we stop and start and stop and start, it never quite gets that power. But if we are consistent with our mindfulness and we do cultivate these ways of wisely reflecting, then you get a more evolved and sophisticated mind, which has skills in meditation. This whole path of bhavana, mental cultivation, you become skilled at thinking wisely and putting down unwise thoughts and inclining the mind to wholesome dhammas and experiencing rapture. So you can also get this rapture when you do the anusatis, just thinking of Lord Buddha, his path as a bodhisattva, what he realized, how he overcame the power of greed, hatred, and delusion, and then his life, impeccable in conduct and understanding, and just deeply appreciating the Buddha, feelings of rapture and gratitude and joy come to mind. Similarly with the Sangha-nusati, you think of the teachers whose teachings you've studied, or great monks and nuns you may have met, and you just think of their wholesome qualities, allow the mind to be gladdened, and the rapture arises. And we have to go past that rapture, but it's good to train in gladdening the mind, brightening the mind, experiencing the rapture, and then we try to go deeper into tranquility and serenity. And eventually it becomes one-pointedness, which has more of that equanimity, equipoise, complete composure.
Prah Ajahn, question number 2. I am reading How to See Yourself as You Really Are by His Holiness Dalai Lama. It is quite advanced in its teaching and language. The expressions I'm struggling with to feel more flow in absorbing it when reading is: first, phenomena being empty of inherent existence, and second, dependent arising phenomena. Could Dear Ajahn explain, please, in a bit more layperson words, what these two convey? Sadhu.
So, empty of inherent, I think sometimes the phrase I'm familiar with is empty of inherent self-existence or empty of inherent existence. So we have conventional reality, and then we have the ultimate reality. And the way that we have insights into ultimate reality is by investigating the nature of conditions. So if we can see the nature of conditions as they really are, the mind will begin to glimpse the unconditioned. It's only when we are deluded by the conditions, we grasp them as being solid, real, then it's impossible to have direct experience of the unconditioned. But when you can see conditions as they are, that means that there is enough mindfulness in the mind to recognize truth. And it's that mindfulness, that truth discerning awareness, that will be able to glimpse ultimate nature, which is often described as emptiness, a very spacious, not nothingness. It's the mind knows emptiness. Emptiness of what? Emptiness of self. Emptiness of permanence. Empty of inherent existence. So basically, it's whatever we use, whatever things are around us, we have to understand that they are appearing in that state for a period of time. But they came from previous conditions and they will change into different conditions. So right now I'm holding a mala. This mala was a tree. Before it was a tree, it was a small sapling. Before it was a sapling, it was a seed. So there was no permanence in the seed. The seed changed to a sapling. There was no permanence or inherent existence in the sapling because the sapling grew into a small tree. There's no inherent existence in the small tree grew into a big tree. There's no inherent existence in the big tree got chopped down and was turned into timber. Then one of the things the timber became was a mala. There's no inherent existence in this mala because in a certain amount of time, it will disintegrate and return to earth element and there will be no mala. So things appear in one way. Nobody's saying that that's not true, but it's not, there's nothing permanent there. And so we understand that these headphones, this microphone, we have plastic, we have rubber, we have copper. The plastic and the rubber came from oil. The copper came from mineral ores. If I leave it out in the sun for 5 years, the plastic and the rubber has degenerated and the copper has corroded and it's returning to the earth element. So we understand that things arise due to previous conditions and they're in their current form for a period of time, but actually even when they're in this form, they're already changing. We just can't, we don't have the sharpness of mindfulness to see that things are already degenerating and changing, going back to the elements. So no inherent existence. It means no solidity, no permanence, no fixed reality. So that's how I understand that phrase of no inherent existence. At the same time, every single thing that has no inherent existence did arise due to previous conditions, and it will change into different conditions. So it's constantly in flux, conventional reality. The nature is impermanence and unsatisfactory and not self. The awareness that begins to see impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and not self, that awareness will experience emptiness. So if you begin to have deep insights into anicca, when the feeling of self or grasping at self falls away from the mind will experience a sense of vast spaciousness, emptiness of self, because the self grasping at self makes the mind contracted. But when you see impermanence very, very clearly, that delusion of grasping at the body and feelings and thoughts as being a self falls away from the mind, and you experience peacefulness, spaciousness, and emptiness of the solidity of self and other, creating a world. So yes, that's simply put, that's how I understand it, that nothing is, no inherent self-existence or no inherent existence. There is no solid unchanging cup, there is no solid unchanging prayer beads, there is no solid unchanging human being. It's all constantly in flux, and it's all the result of previous conditions, and it's all, even as I'm speaking, changing into future conditions.
Prah Ajahn, question number 3. Dear Ajahn, I observe many people like to gossip, lack mindfulness, and practices bad speech. How would you create the right conditions so they may be aware and hopefully they will realize of the action? Thank you.
I think the best thing that we can all do is meditate more, because many people might wonder why I don't actually put so much emphasis on meditation. But essentially, our habits are deep, and we kind of go on autopilot. So if we have been a gossipy person, or we've listened to other gossipy people, and we have that deep tendency, then the mind just flows in that direction. But if you meditate every morning and every evening, when you come to sit on your cushion, mindfulness begins to recognize this is its function. This is the nature of mindfulness, is it recognizes wholesome as wholesome and unwholesome as unwholesome. So the more mindfulness, and when you come to practice meditation and you're with your meditation object, you're generating more clarity. The clarity that you generate will be aware. Often there's this sense of, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or that was a bit nasty, or I hadn't said that. So when you come and do your meditation at the end of the day, there's a bit of a reviewing, and then there's a bit of a kind of a hangover of whatever you did during the day. And it's those moments of awkwardness, like, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. Oh, I really shouldn't say that. That moment of recognizing the unwholesome or the unskillfulness that comes from a more sensitive mind with more clarity. Then that clarity we begin to be able to bring in our life. And we should be able to feel, as our meditation develops and our mindfulness develops, we should be able to feel the unwholesomeness of these energies as they come up in the mind before they become speech. The mind becomes more sensitive, and the radar for wholesomeness, the appreciation, love and appreciation of wholesomeness, and the not trusting and not wanting to make karma with that which is unwholesome gets more and more developed. And so there's a kind of an energy, and thoughts are formulating something kind of, it might be something nasty but humorous, and there's just this awareness of, no, don't say that, no, that's not funny, no, don't. But it's like mental cultivation is, the Lord Buddha uses the analogy of refining gold. So we have to take the silt, we have to take the dirt, we have to take the impurities out. And the way we take the silt, the dirt, the impurities out is by seeing them for what they are, and recognizing this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. do good, avoid harm, purify the mind. So we consciously picking up the wholesome and consciously putting down the unwholesome. But this is why I do emphasize that meditating in the morning and the evening is it's like these bookends to your day. You meditate in the morning, you need to set the intention after your morning meditation. I intend to bring my mindfulness into the day. I intend to practice skillful speech, skillful actions, and abandon the unskillful. And then, of course, so if you come in to meditate in the evening, you're reviewing your day. But these two things are important, setting the clear intention. Because if you set the intention, that will help you to notice. And in the beginning, we also have to be patient. So habits are deep. And what is often the case is that people will be saying something that they wish they weren't saying, and they know it's unwholesome, but they can't quite stop themselves. And as their meditation discipline and their quality of their mindfulness improves, halfway through they might be able to stop more quickly. And as meditation develops further and further, you'll be just starting to think something, and you can stop yourself thinking that way before you even speak. And this is how mindfulness deepens. And we might also recognize that there's certain people that if we spend time with those people, our habits of speech degenerate. And sometimes we have to spend less time with the people that seem to encourage us in our unwholesome habits. And we have to spend time with people who are spiritual practitioners, who are more noble-minded, who are trying to train themselves, and you can remind each other to be a bit more careful. So it's not uncommon for people when they become sincere meditators that their friendship circle shrinks, because you realize that the number of people who are very sincerely dedicated to training their mind towards liberation is limited, and most people just trying to squeeze as much fun out of life as they can, and complain about things all the time, blame other people for their suffering. But spiritual practitioners try to take responsibility and not blame others, and take responsibility for our reactions. And it's okay to have less friends if the friends that you have are good spiritual friends. And wise association is praised by Buddha when Ananda said, I think Kalyanamitta, I can't remember the exact phrase, but Kalyanamitta is half of the practice or something like that. And the Buddha said, no, Ananda, Kalyanamitta is the entirety of the practice. So spending time with wise, noble friends. But Kalyanamitta can also be understood as spending time with wise, noble qualities in your own mind. That's what I think Lord Buddha may have been alluding to when he said Kalyanamitta, wise association, is the entirety of the practice. So what we allow our mind to associate with in terms of the Dhammas, wholesome, unwholesome, neutral, the wise association is the entirety of the practice. So cultivating those 7 factors of enlightenment, 4 foundations of mindfulness, etc. But in terms of the question was, how do I make other people realize the unskillfulness of their gossiping? You can't really. And there's a certain point where Luang Por Chah did say that we should place, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was very high. I think it was 95%. Luang Por Chah says we should place 95% of our attention on ourselves in terms of what unwholesome needs to be given up and what wholesome needs to be contemplated, and give 5% of that critical fault-finding mind about what others are doing, should be doing, shouldn't be doing. So that's a very important pointer. And for most people, it's probably 70% other people, 30% themselves. And Luang Por Chah is saying, 95% yourself, 5% other people. And there's some good logic behind this. You can take responsibility for what you're thinking and speaking and doing, but you can't control others. And if you set a good example, people who are sensitive and receptive, who are paying attention, will be inspired by your example. And other people might not. Sometimes if we get very holy and very pious, some people find that annoying. And that's okay too. We have to be willing that everybody doesn't love us. It's okay, as long as our deepest commitment is to getting liberated. So, and my experience, when you deepen your commitment to practice, you do meet other wise practitioners, and your friendship circle might change a bit. So, but we have to develop equanimity towards other people when they're being foolish. And metta is very helpful, because metta has two different qualities in my experience. It has this quality of allowing things to be the way they are and accepting it. And then doesn't mean you don't recognize something's wholesome or unwholesome, but you have a capacity to be with things as the way they are, because the metta citta isn't fault finding, it isn't critiquing. So if someone else is being gossipy and unskillful, you can just let them do that, and you wish them well, and lead by example, train your own mind. In terms of gossiping about other people, so it's we do live in a karmic matrix. So whenever you gossip about people, you may find people gossip about you later as well. So. You also see, when you come to meditate, the mind, this training in sila, we understand the speech one to be not lying and not harsh speech. As you purify your sila, then it's not gossiping and not kind of idle chatter, all these kind of things. So if you have fallen into unskillful speech habits, when you come to sit, there will be a residue of that. You'll see the downside, and that has value. Coming and sitting and feeling a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of remorse about something that one may have done which was unskillful, that's an important part of the process, because that uncomfortable feeling is what helps us to not do it again. We set the intention, okay, I don't want to do that. Don't want to spend quite so much time talking in these ways with those people. Try to keep it more wholesome. Yeah, so there is some discomfort in the process of training our minds, but kind of growing pains. In my experience, you can only exert so much control on other people. They have to want to develop themselves, and we need to know what we can take responsibility for, what our duties are. And we need to take responsibility and do our duties. And then we cultivate the four Brahma Viharas. We have metta for people, and also equanimity. So just talk a little bit about what's happening here at Anandagiri by way of catching up with people and sharing a little. In Thailand, we have this men, when they're 20, they have to go and show up at the local army office. And it's kind of like a lottery system where they have to pull a stick or maybe some balls. I'm not sure what the system is, but a certain percentage of 20-year-olds in every year have to become soldiers, doing military service, and it's by lottery. So, and it's for 2 years. So at the moment in the monastery, I have 6 soldiers who have come to work for 10 days working on my kuti. So the way that happened is on the abbot's kuti. The way that happened is one of the monastery supporters' son is a soldier, fairly senior soldier, and she was able to ask him if some soldiers would be willing to. So in Pitsanalok, they're Air Force cadets in a way, and they're coming from a barracks where there are 200 soldiers, and they've been soldiers for 3 months. And so in Thailand, monasteries, it's kind of a tradition that monasteries can ask for help from the military with noble projects. So we have had the soldiers come and help plant trees on many occasions. Whenever we've had a big tree planting, the soldiers, the young men in their early 20s, will come and dig all the holes, so that when all the villagers and lay people come, they just need to take the tree out of the sapling out of the little plastic bag, put it in the dirt, cover it over with soil, stake it and tie it. So they make, that helps us to be able to plant 5,000 or 7,000 trees in a day. Without their help, it would be very difficult. But it's really lovely to see that they're actually really happy that they can get out of the army barracks. And because of the COVID situation, there's not much traveling. in between provinces. So they've basically been stuck in that one place for a couple of months, and they're very happy. And the same laywoman, I think the monastery is paying for their accommodation in a local resort. And they also said the food was very bland at the army barracks. So the villagers have been making them a nice spicy papaya salad and these things. So they're enjoying the mountain weather and the breeze, the friendly people, the tasty food, and getting out of the barracks. But it's been very helpful for me because the particular way that I've been laying bricks, I knew it was tricky, but I didn't think it was going to be quite so time consuming. But certainly having 6 young men working for 7 or 8 hours a day for 10 days, I was a little bit behind schedule for what I hoped was the time frame. But these young soldiers will definitely help us get on track. And so I'm very grateful and appreciating having their youthful enthusiasm and helping them to have a noble project to be involved in. And I think in 2 more Zooms in about a month, I should be able to be in that new space with the broadband and the. But right now it's about 65% finished and it's dusty and cluttered. So that's the way it is. Very interesting. I mean, I do contemplate this, like in trying to create something beautiful, it seems like you have to go through some chaos and some mess, dust and a lot of rubbish and a lot of noise to create a peaceful, beautiful space. That's just the way it is, isn't it, on the human realm? So I remember one time many years ago, I went to India with a lay student, a lay friend, and my brother, and she was struggling a bit, and she really wanted to stay in this very posh hotel for one night, and she actually cried at the 3-star hotel when we checked in. She was crying at the checkout counter. It was a bit much. So in trying to help my lay supporter to maintain well-being in herself, I allowed us to be able to spend one night at the Taj Mahal Hotel in Mumbai. And to give you an idea of how posh it was, I think it was $450 for that one night. And that was 16 or 18 years ago. But the reason I bring it up is that I noticed in this vaulted dome in the Taj Mahal Hotel, painted a beautiful Wedgwood blue color, that the paint was peeling off, And I noticed out one of the windows from the $450 suite, looking down, there was this area where all the paint cans were and materials for repairing things. And I just really noticed, here we are in one of India's most exclusive and expensive and beautiful hotels. And the paint is peeling off. And they have to have cluttered areas of stuff that they need to keep applying to keep the mirage of beauty and newness. That you can't have beauty without mess in the conditioned world. So the Abbott's Kuti is in a messy stage. And I notice this with any project. It's probably the same for most people. But when you get to the about 60%, 60 to 90% of any project is difficult. You get the initial spurt of inspiration and the feeling of the value of doing something carries you a certain way. But after about, once you get 60% through and you've got the last 10%, it tends to be inspiration again. You're almost finished. But 60 to 90% is just hard work. So mindfully applying oneself and doing the hard work. So, yeah. But I hope to be able to share it with you in about a month's time. So, okay, take care, guys. Nice spending time with you all.